He's working to help victims of Hurricane Helene, and he joins us live this morning from Asheville, North Carolina, which is kind of your home base each day. And I understand, Aaron, every day you'll be going to, let's say, more remote communities that are still feeling the effects from this flooding disaster.
Yeah, guys, I tell you, I think I've spent more time here over the last few weeks than I have my actual home. And it's interesting because every day I just discover something new that Hurricane Helene left behind. One of those being right behind me, the amount of deforestation that has occurred in these higher elevations, a little bit closer to the Blue Ridge Parkway. I was talking to a local, and you aren't supposed to be able to see the mountains through here. This is supposed to be fall foliage and leaves, with this road just lined with trees. And that's not the case. All of those have just been bulldozed down. And it's really done a number on the tourist amount of tourists that come here for that leaf peeping that we just talked about, because it just simply doesn't exist up here. And today's goal is to come up to a lot of these smaller communities, because a new impact that Helene has left behind is that there are still a lot of donations coming in, and a lot of the easily accessible towns have been getting the supplies that they've needed. But the problem is they haven't been able to get it up to those smaller mountain communities in a timely manner to be able to keep up with the amount of donations that are coming in. And they're having problems where they almost have too many all at once, because those roads are still washed out, blocked by trees, et cetera, et cetera. And they've only been able to taking them up with ATVs, side-by-sides, and big four-wheel drive vehicles. They can't take them up by the truckload like they can down here in those communities.
And this is a flooding disaster that's never happened in this community here in modern times. So understandable that there's a lot of challenges that are presented from, different challenges. Aaron, I was wondering if anything surprised you yesterday on your journeys, or is it kind of what you expected to see?
A lot of it is about what I expected to see, but I did not expect to run into the problem where it appears to be too many donations. It's supplies that they all need, but it was very surprising to hear the amount of troubles that they've been having trucking it up into these higher elevated communities. And I've talked with several people. There's still people that are technically trapped and stuck up in these higher elevation communities that they've been having to literally hand them supplies across the rivers because their roads and bridges have been washed out. And we're approaching a month after Helene. So that's just astronomical. And I've even seen reports that I'm going to be checking in on later of people making makeshift bridges with semi-trailers and piling dirt on top of that to get some of those folks down where they can get some of that supplies and out of those mountains. So that was very surprising to hear.
Back to North Carolina, where relief efforts continue weeks after Helene's devastating impacts.
Storm chaser Aaron Rigsby joins us right now tonight from Clyde, North Carolina, just west of Asheville. Aaron, you've been able to drop off the donations you brought with you on this trip. Have you been able to do that?
Yeah, good evening, guys. I was able to get some of those out earlier this afternoon, but there's been almost a new problem developing where a lot of the communities that are up here in the mountains, it's been so slow to get the supplies and stuff up there due to all those road closures and washouts. They've been only being able to access those with ATV, four-wheelers, and helicopters. So they're only able to take so much at a time. And there's so many donations pouring in that a lot of the folks down here that it's easy to access, they're getting the proper supplies, which is good news. But some of the folks that are still trapped and stuck up here in the mountains, that's where they're running into a lot of problems and having a hard time keeping up with those donations. So tomorrow, I'm going to make my way up into those mountains, try and coordinate with some of those groups and get some of these warm clothes to those folks up there in the mountain towns that are going to be dealing with this chilly weather too coming up as the winter starts to settle in.
And Aaron, what can you tell us about the living conditions there right now?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Some of the scenes are absolutely heartbreaking. You know, here in Asheville, they've been doing a pretty good job at cleaning stuff up. But some of those other communities, unfortunately, people are living out of tents right now. Their houses were either washed away or completely destroyed or very severely damaged. And unfortunately, there have been tent communities that have been essentially popping up. And that is the place that they're calling home for the time being.
All right, Aaron, so we're looking at the video behind you. You have a couple signs up that say road closed. Tell us a little bit about the road conditions up there.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So this is actually the entrance to the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is still closed all through the entire state of North Carolina. It was able to reopen a little bit further north into Virginia, but here in North Carolina, it is absolutely astronomical how much deforestation occurred during this. We've been talking a lot about the devastating effects from the flooding, but this was something that almost got masked over even by me. It is absolutely surreal to see how many trees were blown down during Hurricane Helene in this area. And this has been the result of that as they work to clean those up. There's been multiple landslides that I've come across that have taken out sections of the roadway, and it's going to be quite some time, I think, before they're able to reopen this roadway. And this is, again, what's been causing so many of those problems, though. These trees and these washouts are just really hampering those rescue efforts, especially up into the mountain communities. So we're going to have more on that tomorrow. I'm going to surface some drone video and give that perspective, of what it's like, because it's supposed to be a fall foliage right now. This is supposed to be colorful and cheerful, and it's anything but right now.
It's real tough stuff here, Aaron. I know a lot of people are living in tents, and I can't help but ask, just because we know that there are bears near you. You've mentioned that there's a bear or two within sight of you right now. Again, their living quarters have also been kind of upended in some form, probably less so than the human aspect of things. But have you seen a lot of wildlife out and about? I know that you've been looking off to the side there. You're good at masking this, but we know that you have a bear near you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this has a whole snowball effect. All these trees are down. They knock down their homes. A lot of the shrubs have been completely dismantled, and a lot of the wildlife that they typically feast on are now shoved elsewhere. So they're forced to relocate and make their way up through these mountains that you might not typically see them. And it's exactly what happened here. I was getting ready to set up my live shot, and I looked over, and a mama bear and two cubs are still over here kind of munching on the grass that's available and working their way up the mountain. And a lot of those communities also have to be careful, because if some of that food that's being brought up into these communities, if they aren't properly stored, we're going to run into the issue where wildlife is going to want to start getting into those. So that's kind of one of those untalked about dangers that people can't necessarily forget about. A lot of those little things add up after a while in the grand scheme of things in the big picture. So we got to keep an eye on that as well.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. Aaron Rigsby reporting live from Clyde, North Carolina. Thanks for your update, and we'll check in with you here coming up.